So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, yesterday we talked about a potential trading scenario in this upcoming NFL draft between the Detroit Lions and the Seattle Seahawks. This deal involved multiple first-round picks and DK Metcalf being acquired by the Detroit Lions, and you guys seem to really like the idea. You guys seem to really like the video, and it seemed like you guys were very interested in more trading scenarios involving the number 2 overall pick. And this morning, I came across an article titled 7 Potential Trade Partners for the Detroit Lions for the number 2 overall pick. And I went through that. I kind of, wanted to talk about all these potential scenarios that were brought up in this article, talk about how realistic they are, and if these trades were to occur, what kind of value I would expect back for the Detroit Lions for the number 2 overall pick for each respective team. So that is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about potential trading scenarios. I have 7 different teams, 7 different situations on teams that may be looking to acquire the number 2 overall pick in this year's class. So we're going to go through all of those scenarios, grade them, talk about how likely they are to occur, and if they do occur, what kind of return the Detroit Lions could see. But with all that being said, and without any further ado, let's get right into the first scenario. Now, the first team that was brought up was the first team to pick after the Detroit Lions. Yes, the Houston Texans, currently sitting at the number 3 overall pick in this year's NFL draft, have been identified as a team that could potentially trade up for the number 2 overall pick. Now, personally, I do not see this one happening. Personally, I do not see the Houston Texans making a trade for the number 2 overall pick because they aren't one piece away. They are in a very similar situation to what the Lions were a season ago. You just traded away your franchise quarterback. You got a guy that you know what he is, you know what he can do, and you know that he's a guy that's okay, right? He's probably not going to be a guy that can will your team to victories. Probably isn't going to be a guy that's going to be a top 10, top 15 quarterback in the NFL, but he's a guy that you can absolutely win with in either Davis Mills or, obviously, in the Lions' case, Jared Goff. And the Texans are kind of at a point right now where they're accumulating picks and they need a lot of talent everywhere, right? At this point, they need the best player available and they need as many picks at that BPA as possible. So I don't see the Texans giving up a huge amount of draft picks to move up one spot when at number 3, they're either guaranteed a top tackle, a top edge rusher, a top safety, a top quarterback if they really want to go that route, right? They're guaranteed arguably the best player at any given position in the NFL draft this year at number 3, and I just don't think there's that guy that you have to trade up to number 2 to get if you're the Houston Texans, right? If the Lions take Kayvon Thibodeau, they can take Kyle Hamilton. If we take Kyle Hamilton, they can take Kayvon Thibodeau, or they can take Charles Cross, or they can take Ike Ekwonu, or whatever the case may be. And with the large amount of needs that the Texans have on their roster, I just personally don't see them making that trade. Now, moving on to the second team, second teams, as these two were grouped together for very similar reasons. The New York teams are also teams that have been identified that may be willing to trade up, being of course the Jets and the Giants. Now, I give this one about a 40% chance of happening. I think if either one of these teams falls in love with one of the top tackles, whether it be Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal, and that player is there at number 2, I think the Jets could look to jump the Giants could look to jump the New York Jets in that trade. I think they could try to get ahead, try to get their top tackle, give Daniel Jones some protection, or they move up to get Kayvon Thibodeau or Kyle Hamilton or whatever player they believe would be the best fit for their team. And I think the same thing could apply to the Jets, as the Jets are looking for protection for Zach Wilson. They're looking for, that offensive line to protect him. Mekhi Becton's coming back next year. They could look for that other tackle on the other side, really create a really solid foundational offensive line for Zach Wilson, and I think they could be looking to move ahead because I don't think offensive tackle is out of the question for either Jacksonville or the Houston Texans at this point in time, and I think either one of these teams could be looking to trade up just to verify and guarantee that they get their spot. Now, with this being the case, I think if the Jets were to move up, I don't think they'd give up a ton. I have the Jets trading the number 2 overall pick, and in return, the Detroit Lions would receive the 4th pick, the 38th pick, the 69th pick, and a 2023 6th round pick. That's to leave the Jets with 2 first-round picks, leaves them with a 2nd, a 3rd, a pick in every single round. It's basically giving up just the extra picks that they acquired from the Jamal Adams trade and from the Sam Darnold trades. It's not a really bad value for the Jets to move up. It's still good value for the Lions to move down 2 picks, but it's not like it's giving away their entire draft class in order to move up. It still leaves the Jets with a lot of picks and could get them their best player available. You could even see them replacing that 4th pick with the 10th pick, but if they're replacing with the 10th pick, I would ask for a little bit more if I were the Detroit Lions, being like the higher 2nd and higher 3rd round picks opposed to the second and 3rd round picks that they hold respectively. Now, the Giants are 1 spot below the Jets at number 5, and for the Giants, I think it's very similar, right? You give up pick 2 if you're the Detroit Lions, you move down to 5, very much still in range of like your Trayvon Walker, your Malik Willis if you want that guy, maybe your Kyle Hamilton if you're lucky. I think if the Giants want to trade up, it would cost them the number 5 pick, 36, 67, 112, and a 2023 5th. Again, you're moving down a little farther, so the value goes up, but that still leaves the Giants with multiple first-round picks and at least 1 pick in every single round. I don't think this trade is super likely to happen. I think it's more likely that the Jets and the Giants just stay put. They're happy with what they get with their top 5 pick. And again, kind of like the Houston Texans, they're not quarterback needy right now, so they can kind of just take what they get, take whatever pick falls to them, and just live with whatever guy that they get without, giving up a ton of capital and still using those other 3 to 4 picks down the line to improve the roster even further. But going down a little farther, this is where I think the trades start to get really interesting and very intriguing. The Atlanta Falcons were the next team identified as a potential trading target with the Detroit Lions, and I think this could really very realistically happen. The Atlanta Falcons hold the number 8 overall pick in this year's class, sitting behind the Carolina Panthers, who are very much and very openly looking for their next franchise quarterback. Now, whether that be Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral, whatever the case may be, it's very evident that Carolina is looking for a quarterback, and it's very clear that Atlanta needs a quarterback as well. I think if Atlanta, who rumors have been saying are very interested in Malik Willis, if there's a rumor to come out that the Lions are interested in Malik Willis as well, that they're very much willing to take him at the number 2 overall pick, I think that could really bump up the price of the number 2 overall pick for the Atlanta Falcons, right? If you're the Lions, you market this pick as, okay, we'll give you the number 2 overall pick, but we're dropping 6 spots. We're missing out on our elite generational talent this year, so we want a lot, and we know you want this quarterback, so we can bargain it for even more, and I think this trade is likely to happen. I think it's a very realistic trading scenario for the Detroit Lions, but if the Lions do trade away the number 2 overall pick to the Atlanta Falcons, falling outside the top 5, I think they should get an absolute haul. And the trade that I came away with was the Lions trade away the number 2 pick and their 2023 4th round pick, but in return, the Detroit Lions fall 6 spots to number 8. They receive a 2nd round pick in the 58th overall selection, a 3rd round pick in the 82nd overall selection, and a 2023 1st round pick from the Atlanta Falcons. I think Atlanta would be willing to pay a lot if they fall in love with a quarterback. Quarterbacks make teams do very crazy things, very ill-advised tactics, and very ill-advised moves. We saw the Bears give up a 1st round pick to move up for Justin Fields. We saw the San Francisco 49ers give up a 1st round pick this year in order to move up for Trey Lance. Quarterbacks are extremely valuable, and a quarterback market right now in the NFL draft is at least a future 1st round pick, and I think the Lions could leverage that out of the Atlanta Falcons, walking away from this draft still with a pick in the top 10, with 2 more picks in the top 100, and going into next year with not only 2 but now 3 1st round picks, 1 from themselves, 1 from the Rams, and 1 from the Atlanta Falcons, 2 of which should be relatively high, top 15 in next year's NFL class. Now, the Carolina Panthers were the next team to be mentioned, and a lot of these teams are top 10 teams, and I think that's really where your range is if you're the Detroit Lions, right? Pittsburgh at 20 probably doesn't have the draft capital to move up unless they're giving you like their Minkah Fitzpatrick, or unless they're giving you some really elite player. They don't really have the draft capital to move up, right? The Saints don't really have the draft capital to move up unless they give away their entire draft class. And honestly, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for a lot of these teams to move up into the top 10 if they're falling outside the top 15, right around bordering top 20, because they just don't have the draft capital, and they would have to give up significantly too much in order to get to the number 2 overall pick. So a lot of these trade partners are going to reside within the top 10, and you're going to see that movement within the top 10, right? Last year, 12, you saw what the San Francisco 49ers gave up in order to move up from 12 to 3. They gave up an insane amount of picks, and I don't think a lot of NFL teams are willing to do that unless they are in love with a quarterback, and teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers are just way too far down the board, and they're going to be too good in the future for those first round picks to really matter enough unless you're giving up 3 or 4 first round picks to move from 20 to 2 and convincing the Lions to move from 2 all the way down to the 20th overall selection. So Carolina is the next team on the board. Carolina currently sits with the 6th overall pick in this year's class, and it is being reported that they are in love with a quarterback, that they want a quarterback in this year's class, and they are going to take the first quarterback that is available, and that they are going to take the best quarterback that is available on the board. Now again, if they fall in love with Malik Willis, I could see them giving up a lot of draft capital in order to move up, but the problem with Carolina is they do not have a lot of draft capital in order to move up. Yes, they hold the 6th overall pick, but after pick number 6, they will be sitting until the early 100s. They don't hold another pick until, I believe, 115, 116 in the NFL draft. So after the 6th overall pick, they're going to be waiting over 100 spots and 100 selections to make their second pick. And again, I don't think they have the draft capital to move up unless you're offering next year's first, next year's second, next year's third round pick, right? Because those are less valuable than this year's, because you don't know where the Carolina Panthers are going to rank unless they give up multiple big top picks for next year or multiple first round picks. I don't see the Detroit Lions moving down with the Carolina Panthers, and I don't see the Carolina Panthers having the ammunition to move up from 6 to 2. And then the last team that I wanted to talk about, and the last team from this list, was one we've talked about in the past, and that is the Seattle Seahawks, currently sitting with the 9th overall pick in this year's class due to the Russell Wilson trade. They absolutely have the draft capital to move up in this year's class, but just like the other teams, I didn't want to just take all of their draft picks. I wanted to keep it semi-realistic, leave them with a decent amount of draft picks, and leave them with enough draft capital to not only move up and get their quarterback, but put a few pieces around their quarterback while they try to rebuild the franchise. Now, with that being the case, I do think that Seattle is fairly realistic to move up. They are behind Atlanta, and they are behind Carolina, meaning they will not get the number 1 quarterback in this class. Likely, they won't get a top 2 quarterback in this class unless they move up to number 2 to the Detroit Lions. And obviously, yeah, they could trade to 3 or 4 or 5 necessarily to move ahead of Carolina, but we're talking about the Detroit Lions. So in this scenario, they're calling up for number 2, and they are calling up to the Detroit Lions, who I think would be one of the more willing teams to move down in the NFL draft class. Now, in this scenario, I'm not going to talk about DK Metcalf, because if you want to hear about this hypothetical trade with DK Metcalf, there is an entirely another video that will be linked at the end and will be linked down in the description if you want to go watch it, or it's just the video from yesterday. You can go to the channel and find it there. But when you're talking about just picks, Seattle has a lot of picks in this year's class, and in my opinion, I think the Lions could get a really big haul in order to fall a bunch of spots, very much almost outside of the top 10, and I think Seattle would give up a lot in order to jump Carolina, Atlanta, and Detroit for a potential quarterback in this year's class. The trade scenario that I put together, all of these trade scenarios, by the way, were put together on a mock draft simulator on the strictest settings to try to make it the most realistic, and I just used my judgment to see, like, would it be realistic in order for these teams to give up picks, right? They're not going to give up their entire draft class for one player. Every single one of these trades leaves a team with a decent amount of picks within the top 100 and does not sacrifice their current or future draft capital in order to move up. it makes realistic sense from the picks scenarios. And with that being the case, in this trade, I have the Detroit Lions giving up the number 2 overall pick and the 5th round pick from 2023 in order to receive pick 9, 41, 109, a 2023 first round pick, and a 2023 third round pick. You're only getting 2 picks this year, only 2 picks within the top 100. But again, you're walking away with a future first round pick next year, giving you 3 in 2023, giving you 3 first round picks in 2023 if you're the Detroit Lions. And you're also walking away with another future third, likely a top 100 pick yet again for the Detroit Lions, giving them 6 to 7 top 100 picks in the 2023 class. So with that being the case, those are my top trade scenarios for the Detroit Lions. Those are all the scenarios that have been brought up so far, and those are really the only teams I could even consider really trading up. Any team outside the top 12, any team outside the top 15 realistically cannot trade that high into the NFL draft without giving up a really big player or sacrificing their entire draft class in order to do so. All of these trades I think are very, very realistic, but I don't think many of them are going to happen. I don't see Houston trading up. I really don't see the Jets or the Giants trading up unless Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu goes number 1 overall and they're really scared that Houston may take the second and only other real elite tackle in this class. And I don't think the Carolina Panthers are going to trade up. But with that being the case, I do think there are very realistic scenarios where Seattle and Atlanta could be calling to inquire about the 2nd overall pick. And I think if either of those two teams call, you know they're calling for a quarterback, and you can leverage that quarterback. You can leverage Malik Willis for so many more picks, likely another future first. So with all that being said, that is life for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you guys think about these trade scenarios? What trade scenarios would you take? What trade scenarios would you pass on? And if you were the Detroit Lions, what position are you trying to get to in the NFL draft? If you're looking to trade down, how far are you willing to go, and what would you need in order to trade down to those picks? I'd be very curious to what you guys think. But with all that being said, that is life for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!